You've probably heard that adding rice hulls or cornmeal to your garden soil is a natural way to make it richer. I used to believe that too, but one day I stopped, and that single change completely transformed my garden. My soil, once pale and lifeless, turned dark, crumbly, and alive with worms and microbes. The difference was so dramatic that I couldn't keep it to myself. Now, I'm not here to tell you that rice or corn are bad. They do offer a little structure and mild nutrition. But the truth is, they only scratch the surface of what your soil really needs. Over the years, I've learned something most gardeners never get taught. Healthy plants don't begin with fertilizer or even sunlight. They begin with living soil. So today on EverGreen Seniors, we're going to dive deep into the world of soil superfoods. Powerful, natural ingredients that can wake up tired ground and bring your garden back to life. Whether you're tending a small raised bed or a backyard paradise, these tips will help you create the kind of soil that keeps giving season after season. Take a moment to picture this. Rich, earthy soil that smells like the forest floor, soft enough for your hands to sink into, alive with earthworms and tiny threads of fungi weaving through the roots. That's the kind of soil we're aiming for, and it's easier to build than you might think. So if you've been wondering why your plants just don't look as vibrant as they used to, or why your soil dries out so quickly, stay with me. Because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to feed your garden to make it thrive, naturally and for the long run. Part 1. Why rice and corn aren't enough. Let's start with the truth that most gardeners eventually discover the hard way. Rice hulls and cornmeal can't fix tired soil on their own. Sure, they sound wholesome and organic, but what they actually give your soil is mostly carbon and a bit of structure. That's like feeding your garden a bowl of plain rice. It fills the space, but it doesn't truly nourish. Over time, you might notice that your soil looks the same year after year, light in color, quick to dry, and slow to absorb water. You keep adding compost, maybe some fertilizer, yet your plants still struggle to grow strong roots or keep their leaves lush and green. That's because what's missing isn't material, it's life. Beneath every handful of soil lives an invisible community of bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and tiny creatures that all work together to feed your plants. When that community is active, the soil becomes self-sufficient. It breaks down organic matter, balances pH, and stores nutrients naturally. But when that life is gone, after years of synthetic fertilizers, overwatering, or simply neglect, your soil becomes like a body running on junk food. It can survive for a while, but not thrive. Think of rice hulls and cornmeal as just appetizers. The main meal your soil craves is something that rebuilds its ecosystem. Once you understand that the real secret to growth lies underground, you'll never look at gardening the same way again. So if your soil has lost its spark, if your plants look weak, no matter what you add, the answer isn't more fertilizer. It's restoring the life beneath the surface. And that's where soil superfoods come in, nature's own medicine for exhausted earth. Part 2, the foundation. Think like nature. When I stopped trying to control every inch of my garden and started paying attention to how nature does it, everything changed. Out in the forest, no one's tilling the soil or adding store-bought amendments. No one's sprinkling cornmeal. Yet the forest floor is soft, rich, and teeming with life year after year. Leaves fall, rain comes, the cycle continues, and the ground becomes more fertile over time, not less. That's the model we should follow. Not forcing growth, but inviting it. Healthy soil isn't built overnight. It's the result of millions of tiny interactions happening every second beneath your feet. Microbes break down organic matter, fungi carry nutrients from one plant to another, and worms keep the soil open so air and water can flow. To garden like nature, we have to stop thinking of soil as dirt and start treating it as a living organism, one that needs to be fed, protected, and given time to breathe. When we understand that, every choice we make in the garden changes. Instead of pouring on quick-fix fertilizers, we start building soil that sustains itself. That means adding ingredients that don't just feed plants directly, but feed the ecosystem that feeds the plants. This is what I call soil superfoods. They're the building blocks of living soil. Things like biochar, worm castings, rock dust, kelp meal, and humic acid. Each of them serves a different role. but together they form the foundation of a soil that grows stronger each season instead of weaker. And here's something I wish someone had told me years ago. Once you build that living soil base, gardening gets easier, not harder. You'll water less, fertilize less, and watch your plants stay healthy even in heat or drought. So before we jump into the specific ingredients, take this moment to remember one thing. Great gardens aren't made by luck or by fancy fertilizers. They're made by gardeners who learn to think like nature, slow, steady, and alive. In the next part, we'll explore the first and most powerful soil superfood that's been used since ancient times, a black, porous material that can literally bring your soil back from the dead. Part 3. Biochar, the ancient miracle. Centuries ago, deep in the heart of the Amazon rainforest, ancient farmers built soil so fertile that it's still alive today. The secret wasn't luck, and it wasn't fertilizer. It was something they created, a mysterious black substance now known as biochar. When I first heard about it, I thought it was just another gardening fad. But the first time I used it correctly, my soil transformed in ways I didn't think possible. The key word here is correctly, because biochar doesn't work if you simply toss it into your beds dry. It must be charged, meaning filled with nutrients and microbes before it touches the ground. Here's how you can do it at home. Take 1 part biochar and soak it in 2 parts compost tea or worm casting tea. Let it sit for at least 24 hours. What you're doing is letting those microscopic life forms move in, turning every tiny pore of the biochar into a home. Once it's ready, mix about 1 cup of this charged biochar for every gallon of soil mix. Or sprinkle a thin layer around your garden beds before turning it in lightly. The change won't just be visible, you'll feel it. The soil becomes lighter and more airy. It holds moisture longer, yet never feels soggy. Over time, you'll find yourself watering less and your plants staying greener, even through hot days. What's most impressive is how long it lasts. Biochar doesn't break down like compost or leaves. It can stay active for hundreds of years. That means every time you add a bit, you're building a long-term foundation, a savings account for your soil. With each season, it grows stronger, richer, and more alive. When I walk through my garden now and dig a small handful of soil, I see earthworms where there were none before. The soil smells earthy, like a forest after rain. That's the gift of biochar. It doesn't just feed your plants for a season, it heals the land beneath them for generations. Part 4. Worm castings, the living fertilizer. Once your soil has a home for microbes, it needs real food. And there's nothing nature-made that feeds soil life better than worm castings. Worm castings are, quite literally, the result of earthworms eating and processing organic matter. The material that comes out the other end is packed with beneficial bacteria, enzymes, and growth hormones that plants can absorb immediately. Think of it as compost taken to the next level. Cleaner, finer, and much more concentrated. I still remember the first time I made my own worm bin. It sat quietly under the porch, barely needing attention. But the moment I scooped out that dark, crumbly compost months later, I knew I was holding something special. My seedlings, which usually grew slowly at first, suddenly took off. Their stems thickened, leaves darkened, and the plants seemed alive. Using worm castings is simple. For seed starting, mix 1 part worm castings with 3 parts regular soil or potting mix. For established plants, sprinkle a handful around the base every 2 weeks. And if you want to make what I call worm tea, just add 1 cup of castings to a gallon of water. Stir well and let it sit overnight. In the morning, pour it directly onto your plants. Within days, you'll notice changes. Deeper green leaves, stronger roots, fewer pests. Worm castings work gently, but they work deeply. They don't burn your plants, and they don't wash away easily. What they do is bring your soil back into balance. Many older gardeners love worm castings because they're simple, safe, and chemical-free. You can even touch the soil after applying it. It's that clean. For anyone who wants to keep gardening well into their senior years, this is one of the easiest and most rewarding habits to adopt. Part 5. Rock dust, feeding the minerals. Now that you've built a living soil home and given it life, it's time to restore what years of gardening may have taken away. Minerals. Most modern soils are mineral poor. Rain, watering, and constant planting slowly leach away trace elements like calcium, magnesium, and iron. Without them, Plants might still grow, but their fruits taste bland, and their resistance to stress or disease weakens. That's where rock dust, particularly basalt rock dust, comes in. Basalt is a volcanic rock ground into a fine powder. It's nature's slow-release multivitamin for your soil. The first time I added it to my compost pile, I didn't expect much. But by the following season, the difference was remarkable. My vegetables were richer in color, the tomatoes had a deeper flavor, and my leafy greens stayed crisp even in the summer heat. To use it, simply mix 2 cups of basalt rock dust per square meter of garden bed, or sprinkle it directly into your compost pile. Over time, the minerals blend into the soil and become available to plants at just the right pace. Rock dust also improves the structure of your soil. It helps tiny particles bind together into soft, crumbly clumps, which hold both air and moisture, the perfect balance for roots. And because it works slowly, it never overwhelms your plants. Instead, it quietly restores what nature once gave, little by little. If you've ever felt that your vegetables don't taste like they used to, this could be the missing link. Plants grown in mineral-rich soil don't just look better, they're healthier, more nutritious, and more flavorful. Over time, even the earthworms return in greater numbers, drawn to the balanced environment. Adding rock dust is one of those small steps that make a big difference, especially for long-term gardeners. It's not flashy, it doesn't act overnight, but it gives lasting results, a kind of quiet strength that carries through the seasons. When we combine these three, biochar, worm castings, and rock dust, we begin to rebuild soil in a way that truly lasts. Biochar gives your microbes a home, worm castings feed them, and rock dust gives them the minerals they need to thrive. And just like that, you're no longer fighting against your soil. You're working with it. In the next section, we'll go beyond the land and reach into the sea to explore a natural powerhouse that can help your plants resist stress, grow stronger roots, and bounce back after storms or heat waves. It's one of my favorite ingredients of all, and once you try it, you'll never look back. Part 6, Kelp Meal, the ocean's gift. When most people think about feeding their soil, they look to the land, compost, manure, mulch. But some of the most powerful nutrition for plants doesn't come from the ground at all. It comes from the sea. Kelp meal is one of nature's most complete and balanced gifts to gardeners. It's made from dried and powdered seaweed, and it contains over 70 trace minerals that most garden soils lack. But that's not all. Kelp is rich in natural plant growth hormones like cytokinins and auxins, which stimulate root development, improve germination, and even help plants recover from shock or stress. I remember the first time I tried kelp meal. My tomato plants had been struggling through a stretch of hot weather. Their leaves drooped every afternoon, no matter how carefully I watered. So I mixed 1 tablespoon of kelp meal into a gallon of water, stirred it well, and poured it around the base of each plant. Within a week, the leaves looked firmer, greener, and healthier. By the next month, those same tomato vines were bursting with fruit. You can use kelp meal in several ways. For a liquid feed, mix 1 tablespoon per gallon of water and use it as a soil drench once a week. Or if you prefer something simpler, sprinkle it directly over your garden beds and water it in gently. It works beautifully in compost piles too, speeding up decomposition while adding vital nutrients. What I love most about kelp is how forgiving it is. You can't really overuse it, and it never burns plants. It's safe, gentle, and deeply nourishing. Think of it as the ocean's multivitamin for your garden. Older gardeners often notice that their plants bounce back faster from stress when using kelp meal, whether it's a sudden cold snap, pest damage, or transplant shock. It's like giving your garden an immune system boost. When combined with your other soil superfoods, kelp helps everything work together in harmony. So next time you're near the coast or shopping at your local garden store, look for kelp meal. A little goes a long way, and your plants will thank you with vigor and color that you may not have seen in years. Part 7. Humic acid, the hidden connector. If kelp meal gives your plants vitality, humic acid is what helps them use that vitality wisely. This incredible substance is made from ancient organic matter, plant and animal remains that have broken down over thousands of years into a dark, nutrient-rich compound. It's the glue that binds your soil ecosystem together. When you add humic acid to your soil, it doesn't feed your plants directly. Instead, it helps your soil hold on to nutrients and moisture longer, while making those nutrients easier for plants to absorb. Imagine giving your soil a stronger memory. It stops forgetting where the nutrients are, and your plants benefit from a steady supply. To make a simple humic acid solution, mix 1 teaspoon of humic acid powder into a gallon of water. Stir it until it dissolves, then pour it evenly around your plants every 2 weeks. You'll notice the difference within a few weeks. Your soil feels softer, holds moisture better, and the color deepens to that rich, dark brown that every gardener loves to see. What makes humic acid truly special is how it multiplies the effects of other soil superfoods. When combined with biochar, it helps the biochar retain even more nutrients. When used with kelp or worm tea, it enhances nutrient uptake. It's like upgrading your soil's communication system. Every part starts working together more efficiently. If you live in an area with sandy or clay-heavy soil, humic acid can be a game changer. Sandy soils stop drying out so quickly, and clay soils loosen up, allowing roots to breathe. For older gardeners who want to simplify their routine, this is one of the easiest ways to create lasting improvement with minimal effort. Think of humic acid as your soil's silent helper, invisible, steady, and always working behind the scenes. It connects everything else, creating a garden that feels balanced and alive. Part 8. Mycorrhizal fungi, the underground network. Now let's explore one of the most fascinating and invisible parts of a healthy garden. Hidden beneath your feet, in the quiet darkness of the soil, exists a vast web of life called mycorrhizal fungi. These tiny filaments form partnerships with plant roots, expanding their reach far beyond what they could ever achieve on their own. Scientists call it the wood wide web, and once you understand it, you'll never see your garden the same way again. These fungi attach themselves to plant roots and act like nature's delivery service, transporting water, phosphorus, and other nutrients directly to where they're needed. In return, the plants share a small amount of sugar from their photosynthesis. It's pure teamwork. To add this magic to your garden, sprinkle a teaspoon of mycorrhizal inoculant directly on plant roots at transplant time. For established plants, gently mix it into the top layer of soil around the base and water it well. Within days, the fungi begin connecting with your plant's roots, building an underground network that makes your garden more resilient and cooperative. Once this connection forms, plants start communicating. A stressed plant under attack by pests can actually signal its neighbors through these fungal threads, helping nearby plants strengthen their defenses. It's a phenomenon you can't see with your eyes, but you can witness it in the results. Stronger growth, more vibrant foliage, and fewer signs of stress. I once used mycorrhizal fungi in a patch of worn-out soil where nothing seemed to grow. A month later, the same area was filled with lush green herbs and vegetables that didn't need nearly as much watering. The transformation was remarkable, and it reminded me that nature always finds a way to restore balance if we just give it the right tools. For senior gardeners, this is one of the most effortless yet powerful steps you can take. One small sprinkle during planting season can support your garden for years, quietly working beneath the surface where life truly begins. When you combine the gifts of the sea with the power of the earth, kelp meal, humic acid, and mycorrhizal fungi, you create a harmony that no chemical fertilizer can replicate. You're not just feeding plants, you're rebuilding an ecosystem. In the next section, we'll explore some lesser-known soil superfoods that most gardeners overlook. Simple, low-cost ingredients that can supercharge your soil biology even further. These are my personal favorites, and I can't wait to share them with you. Part 9. Hidden Superfoods. Most gardeners ignore. After years of experimenting with soil amendments, I realized that the real breakthroughs don't always come from expensive products. Sometimes the most powerful soil boosters are the humble ingredients sitting right in your kitchen or backyard. These are what I call the hidden superfoods of the garden. Simple, natural, and incredibly effective once you know how to use them. The first one is fermented plant juice, often called FPJ. It's an old method farmers in Japan and Korea have used for centuries. You make it by chopping up fast-growing green plants like comfrey, nettles, or even grass clippings, then mixing them with brown sugar. After about a week, the mixture releases a dark, sweet-smelling liquid filled with enzymes and beneficial microbes. Just 1 tablespoon of that per liter of water is enough to wake up tired soil almost overnight. It feeds not just your plants, but the bacteria that help those plants grow stronger. Next is BLAB, or lactic acid bacteria serum, something I learned from an old farmer friend who swore it changed his soil forever. It's made from fermented milk or yogurt whey, and it's packed with good bacteria that break down organic matter faster and suppress harmful pathogens. I like to mix 1 tablespoon of LAB into a gallon of water and water my plants once a week. The soil smell changes after a few weeks, from stale and sour to fresh and earthy. That's when you know life is returning. And here's one more overlooked gem: crushed eggshells. Most people throw them away, but they're pure calcium carbonate, the same mineral your plants need to prevent problems like blossom end rot in tomatoes and peppers. I rinse, dry, and bake the shells for 10 minutes, then crush them into powder and sprinkle them around fruiting plants once a month. Over time, the calcium slowly releases into the soil, strengthening stems and boosting fruit quality. Finally, one of the most natural and free superfoods of all, leaf mold. Rake up fallen leaves, pile them in a shaded corner, and keep them slightly moist. A year later, you'll have one of the richest, most fragrant compost materials on Earth. It's light, fluffy, and full of beneficial fungi. When mixed into your soil, it improves aeration, retains moisture, and builds humus, the foundation of every healthy garden. These simple materials, FPJ, LAB, eggshells, and leaf mold, might not sound glamorous, but together they do what synthetic fertilizers never can. They bring your soil back to life. And once that happens, your garden starts thriving almost on its own. Part 10. The Soil Smoothie, a complete blend for life. After trying all these ingredients separately, I eventually realized that the real magic happens when you combine them. That's when the soil truly transforms into a living, breathing system. So I started creating what I like to call the soil smoothie, a natural tonic that blends the power of every soil superfood into one easy mix. Here's how I make it. In 1 gallon of water, I add 1 cup of worm casting tea, 1 teaspoon of kelp meal, 1 teaspoon of humic acid, and half a cup of charged biochar. If I have it on hand, I also mix in a tablespoon of fermented plant juice or lab serum. I stir everything together until it looks like a rich brown tonic. Then, I pour it around the base of every plant, once every 2 weeks. This simple mixture feeds the soil from every angle: microbes from the worm tea, minerals from the kelp and rock dust, moisture retention from the biochar, and microbial activation from the fermented ingredients. Within a few weeks, you'll notice your soil turning darker, more crumbly, and full of tiny life forms. I like to call this mixture a living drink for the garden, because that's exactly what it is. You're not just giving plants nutrients, you're giving the soil life itself. One of my neighbors, a 68-year-old gardener who had nearly given up on her hard, compacted clay soil, tried this blend one spring. By midsummer, her vegetable beds were producing so much lettuce and kale that she began sharing baskets with the entire neighborhood. Her secret wasn't expensive fertilizer, it was biology, restored from the ground up. That's the beauty of natural gardening. Once the soil ecosystem starts working with you, everything gets easier. You water less, weeds become fewer, and pests seem to disappear on their own. The soil becomes your partner, not your problem. Part 11. Real results from everyday gardeners. Sometimes when people hear about all these natural methods, they think it sounds too good to be true. But the results speak for themselves. Over the years, I've watched countless gardeners, especially seniors, completely revive their yards using nothing more than these soil superfoods. Take Linda, for example, a retired teacher in her 70s who moved to Florida with nothing but sand for soil. She started small, adding worm castings and biochar each season, watering every 2 weeks with her own version of the soil smoothie. Today, her backyard is a thriving oasis, papayas, hibiscus, and herbs all growing side by side. She says it's the first time her soil has ever held water long enough to grow anything well. Then there's Mark, a former truck driver from Arizona who was ready to give up after his vegetables kept burning under the summer sun. He mixed biochar, kelp, and humic acid into his raised beds and covered everything with a thick layer of leaf mold. Within a season, his garden held moisture through triple-digit heat. His peppers turned a deep, glossy red, and his tomato vines looked like they came straight from a magazine. These stories are real, and they're not rare. What they prove is that healthy soil isn't about how much you spend. It's about how much life you invite in. Whether you garden in sandy soil, heavy clay, or even in containers, the same rule applies. Feed the microbes, not just the plants. When you do, the results follow naturally. Stronger roots, healthier leaves, richer color, and better flavor, all from soil that's alive. And as the years go by, you'll notice something even more rewarding. Gardening becomes less work, not more. Because once your soil learns how to take care of itself, you're no longer gardening against nature. You're gardening with it. And that's the beautiful part of aging gracefully as a gardener. The older we get, the more we learn to work in harmony with time, patience, and the quiet wisdom of nature. In the next section, we'll talk about how to maintain this living soil with simple, low-effort habits, perfect for those of us who want to keep gardening joyfully without strain. You'll see how just a few small routines can keep your soil thriving year after year, so it rewards you season after season with abundance, beauty, and peace. Part 12. Long-term soil care for seniors. The beauty of building living soil is that once it's established, it starts to care for itself. But even the healthiest garden still needs gentle tending, just like we do as we age. The secret isn't working harder, it's working smarter. Over the years, I've found a few simple routines that keep the soil thriving year after year without demanding too much effort. First, always keep your soil covered. Think of mulch as your garden's skin. Just like we need protection from the sun and wind, your soil needs it too. Spread a layer of compost, shredded leaves, or straw across every bare patch. This keeps moisture locked in, prevents weeds, and slowly feeds the earthworms below. I like to call it my lazy gardener's trick, because once you mulch properly, the soil stays soft and rich with hardly any digging. Next, water deeply but infrequently. Most people sprinkle their garden every day, but that only wets the surface, encouraging shallow roots. Instead, give your plants a deep drink once or twice a week, letting the water soak down to the roots. The plants will grow stronger and the soil biology will thrive. And if you've built up plenty of organic matter, you'll be amazed at how long your soil can stay moist, even during hot, dry days. Another key habit is gentle feeding. You don't need to pour on fertilizer every week. Once your soil is alive, it feeds itself, but it appreciates small, regular boosts. A watering can of worm tea or your soil smoothie every couple of weeks is enough. These mild, living feeds are like a healthy tonic. They keep the microbes active and the plants energized without overwhelming them. Also, make it a habit to observe your soil. Scoop up a handful every now and then. It should feel springy, smell earthy, and crumble gently between your fingers. If it's sticky, sour, or smells off, it's telling you it needs more organic matter or air. Over time, you'll develop a kind of intuition, a quiet conversation with your garden that tells you exactly what it needs. And finally, give your soil time to rest. Rotate crops when you can, and plant cover crops like clover or rye in the off-season. They'll keep the ground active and full of roots even when you're not growing vegetables. For older gardeners, these habits make the work lighter and the rewards greater. It's about building a rhythm with your garden, one that gives you peace, not pressure. Part 13, the science of renewal. What's fascinating is that everything we've talked about, the biochar, the kelp, the humic acid, the fungi, it isn't just folklore. Modern soil science now backs it up with solid research. And it's incredible how closely it mirrors what traditional gardeners and farmers knew centuries ago. Biochar, for instance, has been shown to increase microbial life in the soil by up to 50%. That means more bacteria and fungi actively breaking down organic matter and feeding plants naturally. Worm castings have been found to reduce plant diseases by as much as 70%, because they introduce beneficial microbes that crowd out harmful ones. Kelp extracts have been proven to boost root growth by nearly 30%, and mycorrhizal fungi can extend a plant's root reach by 300% or more. Think about that. The same tiny handful of soil under your feet can suddenly have the power of an entire underground forest once these life forms return. It's like turning your garden into a miniature ecosystem, where everything works together. This is what sustainable gardening is really about. Not quick results or shiny fertilizers, but regeneration. Each season builds upon the last, just as nature intended. You're not just growing plants, you're restoring the land. And what's even more inspiring is how forgiving nature is. Even if your soil has been neglected for years, even if it's compacted or tired, life can always return. All it takes is patience and the right kind of nourishment. When you understand that gardening is really about renewal, not just for your plants but for yourself, it becomes more than a hobby. It becomes a way of reconnecting with the rhythm of the earth. Every handful of compost, every drop of worm tea, every worm that wriggles back into the soil is a reminder that regeneration is always possible, no matter the season of life we're in. Part 14. The reward. Soil that feeds itself. After months of nurturing and observation, something beautiful begins to happen. Your garden no longer feels like work. It feels like companionship. You start noticing how your soil changes color after each rain, how the worms surface at dusk, how even the weeds look greener, because the ecosystem is alive again. When you feed your soil with living ingredients, you create a self-sustaining cycle. Your compost decomposes faster. Your mulch turns into humus. Earthworms multiply, aerating the ground naturally. Your plants become more resistant to pests and drought. And slowly, the need for fertilizers, sprays, and constant worry disappears. I remember one morning after a summer storm. I walked into my garden barefoot, and the ground felt cool and spongy under my feet. It was the kind of soil you only see in untouched forests. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just growing vegetables anymore. I was growing life itself. This is the point where every gardener's heart softens. You realize that the goal isn't control, it's cooperation. You're not forcing nature to obey you. You're joining in the conversation. And the more you listen, the more your soil gives back. For seniors, this kind of gardening brings a sense of peace that few other activities can offer. It connects you to something ancient and enduring. Watching your soil thrive season after season reminds you that no matter your age, there's still growth, still renewal, still purpose in nurturing life. The reward for all your patience isn't just the flowers or the harvest. It's the living ground beneath you that keeps giving, year after year, quietly and faithfully. In the final part, we'll bring everything together, a reflection on how feeding your soil is also a way of feeding your spirit. Because when you learn to grow living soil, you learn to live in harmony with time, nature, and yourself. Part 15. Closing inspiration. There's a moment, after all the planting and watering and waiting, when you look down at your hands, dark with soil, lined with experience, and realize something profound. You haven't just been tending a garden, you've been tending life itself. For so many of us, gardening started as a way to pass the time, to keep busy after retirement, or simply to grow a few vegetables. But somewhere along the way, it becomes something deeper. You start noticing the small things, how the soil breathes after a rain, how the first earthworm curls gently when you lift the mulch, how your plants seem to respond when you give them living food instead of chemicals. And in those quiet moments, you feel something stir inside. A connection, not just to nature, but to the rhythm of life itself. Because soil, in its simplest form, is a mirror of our own journey. It can be tired, overworked, and neglected. Yet with patience, nourishment, and care, it always finds its way back to vitality. So when I say stop using rice and corn, it's not because they're useless, it's because there's something better waiting for you. Something richer, older, wiser. Biochar, worm castings, rock dust, kelp, humic acid, and the unseen threads of mycorrhizal fungi. These aren't just materials. They're living bridges between your garden and the heartbeat of the earth. When you begin feeding your soil instead of just feeding your plants, you create a system that gives back endlessly. You start to notice that each year your garden demands less and rewards you more. The plants begin to glow with a kind of quiet strength. The harvests taste sweeter, the colors are deeper, and even your air smells richer with life. And perhaps most importantly, you change too. Gardening this way teaches patience, humility, and deep gratitude. It reminds us that life grows best when it's nurtured gently, not forced. That real strength doesn't come from rushing, but from balance. When we feed the soil, we learn to slow down. We start trusting the process. We stop looking for instant results, and instead we begin to see beauty in every small step. A sprouting seed, a returning worm, the first bloom of spring. I've met so many older gardeners who tell me that working with living soil has given them a new sense of purpose, that it's helped them reconnect with nature, with their memories, and even with themselves. There's something deeply healing about watching the earth come back to life under your care. It's a gentle reminder that it's never too late to renew, to grow, and to give life another chance. So the next time you reach for that bag of rice hulls or cornmeal, pause for a moment. Look at the ground beneath your feet and imagine what it could become if it were truly alive. Try adding a little biochar, a scoop of worm castings, a handful of kelp meal, or a sprinkle of rock dust. Watch how your soil changes over the weeks. Feel how it softens, how it breathes, how it smells of rain and renewal. You'll see, nature always rewards care with abundance. When we give back to the earth, it never stops giving to us. And if this journey has inspired you, even just a little, to see your soil not as dirt, but as a living partner in your garden, then you've already taken the most important step. Because every thriving plant, every flower in bloom, and every juicy tomato on your plate starts with one thing: a handful of living, breathing soil that you helped bring back to life. So my friends, keep growing with curiosity, with kindness, and with patience. The garden doesn't rush, and neither should we. Thank you for spending this time with me here on EverGreen Seniors. If this video has given you new ideas, hope, or inspiration for your garden, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It's how we keep this beautiful community growing together. One garden, one heart, and one handful of living soil at a time. Until next time, may your soil stay rich, your plants stay strong, and your days be filled with peace and growth.